showers, perhaps thundery, good, occasionally poor. Biscay, variable 3 or less, increasing 4 at times. Thundery showers at first in north, good, occasionally moderate.
In 1984, I transferred out of Cooper Union and exchanged to a program at the Slade School of Art in London. I had absolutely no money. Through a series of mistakes on the part of the school, my financial aid information got lost, but I went anyway. And I got bits and pieces here and there, jobs doing this or that. I delivered milk for a guy and cleaned out the barroom taps at the bar down the street, the pub. All in all, despite the fact I had absolutely no money, it was an incredible experience. My hours were very strange. I would sometimes stay up very late, get up very early, and quite by accident, I discovered what's called the shipping news. There's a shipping forecast that the BBC runs every night just after midnight. It's basically just a rundown of what the weather around the UK is going to be for the next 24 hours. And there's something very lilting and very calming about it. A lot of people actually use it to put themselves asleep. And I found that if I set the snooze alarm on the radio that was next to the bed, I actually would hear the shipping forecast, and then it would go off at exactly the point where they had just finished playing God Save the Queen. Every time I hear it, it takes me back to those days of having no money, a cold water flat in Islington, London, and the salad days, they're called, basically. And I think back on that and I just think, you know, I might have been poor, but I was genuinely happy and sort of became an artist for good by that point in my life. So I'm going to play a little bit of the shipping forecast for you and just take a listen and see if you can find it, because it's worthwhile seeking out.
Now, the shipping forecast issued by the Met Office on behalf of the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency at 0015 on Wednesday, the 3rd of March. The general synopsis at 1800, low northeast Fitzroy 1021.
History is just the study of how people lived in the past, and I find that endlessly fascinating. Not so much the wars and the conflict part of history and the story of people's lives, but what their day-to-day lives were like. What did their homes look like? How did they build them? What did they wear? What did they do for fun? All of these things I just can't get enough of. The one book and the one author that I come back to again and again and again is Charles Mann, and this book in particular, 1491. He radically altered our understanding of what we now call the Americas before Columbus arrived in 1492. It wipes away pretty much everything I ever learned about the quote-unquote New World. In fact, one of Mann's findings is that there were probably a larger population in the Americas in 1491 than there were in Europe at the time. It's really tempting to just sort of take things for granted and not dig too deep and just let people kind of, if they didn't make a big historical splash like a president or a general, to not dig too deep and just sort of let that lie. But these historians, this scientist and historian, really dug deeper and deeper and deeper and really made people three-dimensional. They shook off a mantle of assumptions about what people were always like that has kind of weighed down the topics for a lot of people and actually made history boring for a lot of people because it only really covers a tiny slice of humanity. So I follow their example, or I try to follow their example. It inspires me to keep trying to do better work here. And I'll just keep trying to reveal stories that are covered up for most people, and try to make history accessible and interesting, and so that people can learn about their own lives through the windows of the past.
There's sounds in my head that have always been there, and I've always wanted to make them come out into the real world. The sounds aren't always musical. The sound of a rusty swing set when you're swinging on it makes a pattern, makes a rhythm. And I would have fevers when I was really young. I would get really sick and have these fevers, like 103, 104 degree fevers, and I would hallucinate. I would remember the feeling from the hallucinations afterwards, and they always stuck with me, and they would start to creep into my dreams. I had one episode where my brother was freaked out. And I can remember him talking to me, and I remember him asking, "What are you doing?" And I said, I'm throwing pennies and nickels and all the things in the world, and I'm throwing them. All the things that I threw in the ocean would become stars, and all the stars would eventually fill up the sky until everything was completely white. I just knew this was futile. I knew no matter how much I threw, it was never going to fill up the ocean and then eventually fill up the sky and then completely white out the sky. I just knew it was impossible, that no matter how hard I worked, nothing was changing. I suppose that's why I like the theremin. I suppose that's why I like twiddling knobs to make sounds. Sound goes out into the universe, and when you can make something that's never been heard before and never is heard again, I think you're contributing to that sort of being part of occupying this expansive universe that is impossible for us to occupy.
Now, nearly all those I loved and did not understand when I was young are dead, but I still reach out to them. Of course, now I am too old to be much of a fisherman, and now, of course, I usually fish the big waters alone, although some friends think I shouldn't. Like many fly fishermen in western Montana, where the summer days are almost Arctic in length, I often do not start fishing until the cool of the evening. Then, in the Arctic half-light of the canyon, all existence fades to a being with my soul, and the sounds of the big Blackfoot River, and a 4-count rhythm, and the hope that a fish will rise. Eventually, all things merge into one, and a river runs through it. The river was cut by the world's great flood and runs over rocks from the basement of time. On some of the rocks are timeless raindrops. Under the rocks are the words, and some of the words are theirs. I am haunted by water.